Alright guys, TacticalRab here, and today hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far as Team Scrims get back underway for the new year. FaZe Black, arguably the best challenger team, has been playing lots of practice over the last couple of days against pro opposition. Notably though, the Toronto Ultra last night. A great 2023 for the Ultra, but a very poor finish with that 3-0 slammage against Boston, where Envoy had a particularly hard time. Envoy's struggles in Scrims seem to be continuing on the evidence we saw yesterday. Can he turn it around, especially given all the talk about the upgrade that he was meant to be over Hicksy? Very much into your thoughts on the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. As I say, Scrims back underway, as Clay says here. First day back in Scrims. You know, he's found a raspberry white claw straight in there. So he's had a good Christmas, New Year period, it seems. But, well, the pressure is on for all these teams. And to be fair, Carolina especially, to try and turn things around, because they were not looking good at the end of 2023. And Toronto were, until they played that final series, which has raised many questions around this roster. Now, the team that many have been practicing against over the last couple of days that's been streaming their practice is a Seams FaZe Black roster. Now, the rotation, this was very controversial, as you expect. If you do anything on the challenger side, get ready for some backlash. But anyway, so, and for the rotation, when trying to ask a load of challengers players to effectively vote for what order they think the players should be, you know, put in the challenger side. Now, there's actually like 60 plus players on this list, so it's never going to be perfect, but it gets the rough point across. So, Asim was voted the best player in challenges, which really shouldn't be a surprise. This guy, if he was in the Pro League right now, he'd probably be like an A-tier player. Like, he always tends to be at the start of game life cycles, and, you know, maybe that's going to fall off over time, but, you know, I'd like to see Asim back in the league. The pros in challenges, or the players in challenges, think that he's the best player in there right now, at least on an average level. So, you know, Kremp, Brack, Exceed, his teammates are up here as well. ErikBooM, of course, who is the Heretics substitute. Lunars is a very promising, I think, fast AR player. Flames, who is the Los Angeles Skrilla sub. Noisy, Ulysses, and then even Temp here is number 10. So it's not exactly a guarantee that, you know, Donnie Temp goes down and challenges absolutely fries. And at the end of the day, what do these lists really mean? Not that much. But to be fair, I respect it from Ant, because there's not much going on right now in challenges. There's literally been nothing happening so far, really, apart from Scrims and, you know, some various tournaments they might have played, but nothing officially from the CDL perspective. So, you know, you've got to create some content somehow, and I think getting the players to vote on where they find themselves is good content. Now, naturally, the players that are voted lower aren't necessarily going to be so happy about this, right? We can see from, you know, 11 to 20. Now, I'm guessing the numbers here on the right-hand side are kind of like the average rating they were given, I guess, by the players, and then they were then sorted into what ranking order that would potentially put them at. So Gunless here, for example, is 17th, TJ 18th, ProLuke 20th. So, you know, maybe not looking good so far for that, obviously, Temp roster, but, you know, Gunless isn't there, but Spart is. So still, Pentagram, Dave Paddy, stuff like this. And I'll just kind of skip through the rest of these for you guys to see how it's going. Just pick out some notable players. Craze, for example, who's on the Boston Academy, as is JurNii. Paul X is here at number 24. So, you know, it's definitely not a guarantee that you go from the Pro League to Challengers and all of a sudden you're frying, right? I mean, there's so many notable names down here, even Bristini, Decimate, Mohawk. I mean, look, Bristini world champion, Phantoms has been around a while, Classic is here. So, you know, this is what the players ranked the players as, and therefore this is how they get put. And, well, as you guys may have noticed, no Doug Censor Martin yet until you get down to number 55, where you find your boy here. So, you know, it goes to 60 seconds, and obviously Doug was here at 55th. So, not a happy man, you can imagine. Now, at the end of the day, does this really matter? Because I don't think that these lists are really affecting anyone getting signed or otherwise, at least for the time being. I think it will really depend what happens at the Boston Challengers event. If some teams, Pro League teams, are considering changes, are they looking at this list of what the players think, or how they're rating the players and thinking, all right, yeah, well, maybe these guys are the best ones? Maybe. But I think it's more so that when FaZe Black turn up to, you know, the Boston Challengers event at the end of this month, if they fry and if they win, then that's going to kind of prove the worth, right, more so than one of these, you know, tier lists for fun would do. But obviously, Doug was going off about this, right? He says at Pentagram, at JurNii as teammates, they've got you guys at 14th and 27th, and I'm not even top 50. I want some of what they're having. So, you know, I think Doug makes a fair point that what really is the point of doing this list? And I get it from the players' point of view, but, you know, this content isn't done for the players, right? And isn't asking the players, so the players can feel happy about it. You know, it's good content for the rest of the community. And I guess it does also benefit the players that are at the top of the list. But, you know, Doug has to realise that it's not necessarily been done for him. But as he says, fair point. I just want to know why we're polling Challengers players about their opinions on team scrims at this point in time when there's nothing happening. The idea of doing a top 50 players list, and we've literally literally had 0 tournaments, not even an online one, simply creates false narratives. Here we go again, the false narratives. If it's based off last year, that's lit, but I generally can't even rank anyone and I play everybody every day. That's why I sat out, which is probably a fair point, right? That, it's difficult to actually say who's good, who's bad, when most of it is all about team scrims. So, Glowfrosty says it's not based on anything but the opinion and egos of players on the list, which I do definitely agree that there's a lot of bias in play here, when, players will vote higher players they like, and they'll vote lower players they don't necessarily like. It was called a top challengers poll, but it was definitely just opinions on the non-existency we've had this year so far. The list should say all challengers players vote based on online team scrims, then nobody would have had a problem with it, which maybe it could have been rephrased as. Now, Doug obviously did some further tweets on this. This was one example of it. I am certain literal players under everyone I associated with are the majority of these votes. Not exactly sure what that sentence is meant to mean, but then he says to even poll and post this at this point is disrespectful, hella disrespectful to players who get results. So I guess he's saying, look, I get results, I deliver the goods, and you're voting me low. And, he wants to sit down here with Rotation Antonisium come Boston. So we'll see if that goes anywhere. But I thought it was all rather entertaining, really. And Methods maybe saw this and thought, all right, it's time for the Johnny Zins Challenger team to officially return. So that would be exciting if, anyone could put something like that together, because, at the moment, the Challenger scene needs all the support that it can possibly get. However, we've seen that most of the top players voted. There were FaZe black players from the team scrims they've had, and they've been very competitive in really whoever they've played over the last couple of days. Scrappy was officially back after a New Year's break where he didn't tweet much in some time, and for most teams it was pretty much their first day of team scrims back. Some teams have been doing it for a little bit longer, which maybe is some degree of advantage in the sense that if you started practicing again on the 27th of December right after Christmas, then you've probably had a few extra days on the new spawns. I mean, the new spawns have been in the game for like a month at this point, but nonetheless, the pros haven't played on them until now, and the weeks of matches and the major will be played on that new spawn update. So the pro teams have not played on this much. The challenger teams have played on this for quite a while. So you would expect that in the first set of scrims, you're going to have a bit of a harder time adapting to that and everything. But at the end of the day, you are playing a top challengers roster that if they were in the pro league, maybe they'd be, 10th, 11th. Who knows? I mean, FaZe back are pretty good. So obviously they're a competitive team, but they played Ravens. There's 8 maps here to look at, and it wasn't particularly pretty for the Ravens, right? And maybe that should be expected for various reasons. Like this map especially here on the Karachi hardpoint, it's Clay that goes 7 in 19, Kremp goes 28 in 14. So, not a pretty one for the Ravens. They did win the skid row, they lost the sub base, and then it continues on. I mean, Terminal, this again was ugly. I mean, GodRx is 8 in 17, it's 250 to 88, they got kind of slammed. Then Carolina did start to win some on the second set of rotations here, but then they actually played the couple of maps again. So they played the set again, and again they played Terminal final map, but at this time it was 250 to 89. GodRx this time had 10 with 10 in 22. So pretty ugly, to be honest. I mean, I guess we can just tally these up real quick. How many did FaZe win, or FaZe back win? 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7. So I guess 7 out of 10 they won. So it was a 7-3 map count in favor of FaZe back over Ravens. Not massively promising, but as I say, it is kind of early days for these teams, and it's not like they were the only team, Ravens, having a bit of a hard time against other challengers rosters. For example, Miami, who are 3-0 in the league right now, they played Team Fellow, and to be honest, I think Miami have played these new spawns for some time, but they still could have got slammed it. 250 to 83 game 1, JurNii went 9 in 19, and then even you can see here on this terminal, this was 250 to 98. So those are just a few results, but the ones that people were really looking at were these ones against Toronto. So we have 4 maps here. I believe they did play 2 sets of these, and Toronto eventually won 6-4 over the set of 10 maps. So, Toronto is still one of the teams to beat in the league. The question to me is, how is Envoy going to fare? Because it was considered that Toronto had made arguably the best change of the entire offseason, right? Getting Envoy in for Hicksy. On paper, he's going to do what Hicksy did, but better in many ways. Therefore, the team just straight up gets better with limited downsides, like the other teams had when they made, let's say 2-man changes around, especially like Sib to New York. Lots of questions there. With Toronto, less questions. On paper, great change. Will that actually work though when, for whatever reason, Envoy is having a harder time, I think, than we might have expected so far. So FaZe versus Toronto, game 1 invasion was 250 to 188. Envoy here goes 10 and 18. Okay, he had a fair bit of hill time, but they did eventually lose the map. They won the next 2 maps, but Envoy still went negative in these, 19 and 25. And on this one, he might have gone positive. I'm not sure. He has 21 kills here, so not sure how many deaths he had, but they won this one 250, 164, because that was basically, it said the latency rather than a death on that scoreboard. And then this one, so Envoy is here at the bottom again, kind of got slammed 13 in 19. Actually, I think I'll have a couple of these so you guys can see the full scoreboard to actually see which players I'm talking about on the left-hand side. This was the sub-base they played against the Team's roster. You know, and look, some of these maps are difficult for SMG players, and to be fair, the entire team got slammed on this one, but this was, Envoy was bottom of the scoreboards here, and then there was this invasion where he was having a pretty tough time. So this was only really a big talking point now, just because of what happened in the final match that he played and the team played of 2023, when they played Boston Breach, and they were coming into this one 2-0, sitting pretty. Boston were 0-3. And they got 3-0 slammed in about 30 minutes. And Envoy, what was it that Octane said in his recap video? Said, like, Envoy forgot to lace his shoes this day or something like that. And yeah, Envoy had one of the worst series that we've seen in a long time, really. He had a 0.49. And I did the Who's the Burger of the Week poll after this one, and I think a lot of you guys actually said GodRx, but there were lots of comments saying, like, it should be Envoy because you don't expect Envoy to have a stinker like this, and you would therefore expect him to turn it around, which you would, and, you know, they've still only played a few games in the league. These are only scrims, like their first day back pretty much, playing the new spawn update, so you're expecting maybe some players to have a harder time, but, you know, you'd expect maybe a little bit more from Envoy so far. And these are the numbers in the season. To be fair, Envoy still has a 0.86, despite that absolute tragic series against Boston. So it's not terrible, but it is definitely a big thing that people are looking at, because let's not forget, Hicksy last year comes into that team for Standy. We know that Scrappy and Standy, despite having some history teaming together, I think, way back in the day, they clearly didn't get particularly, well, they didn't get along so well on this Toronto team. Eventually, Standy gets cut from the roster. Scrappy then says, like, thank the Lord he's gone, or whatever he said in that funny video that they did after the fact. And then they brought Hicksy in, Scrap's boy from the Toronto Ultra Academy team. They won Major 3 last year. They made the grand finals of the World Championship. They were a great team towards the end of the season, and sure, on paper, Hicksy was getting gigaslammed. The funny thing is, really, that his numbers last season, 0.87, 0.87, 0.86, basically exactly the same as what Envoy has so far this season, right? And that was only 3 series, but you know what I mean. So this is what Hicksy did last year, and his rating looks terrible. Gotta feel bad for Hicksy, right? Got a 66 overall rating, but you know, the KDs aren't tragic. I mean, okay, 0.85, 0.9, you can get away with that if you've got the Slayers on your team, and clearly Hicksy was being valuable for the roster. Now, he had good hill time in the hard point. Sure, his damage, his kills weren't great. That's why his rating here looks pretty ugly, but I think there's more to it than just the rating. If you watched any series last year, you'll certainly know that. And also, Hicksy was like a big game player. Sure, some online series you might get fried a bit, but usually on LAN, when they were playing a big series, Hicksy would often turn up. So he was a really valuable asset to that Toronto team last season. There's no way that people actually think that he was just getting hard carried every single series while the team was winning events and making grand finals. Like, Hicksy was a very important part, but I totally get why going into this season they thought, you know what, Envoy's available. You know, that's a straight up upgrade on paper, and, you know, sensible, I think, for them to make that move, because FaZe are making moves, OpTic are making moves, you know, New York are making moves. I think Toronto, I feel bad for Hicksy, but I totally get why they did it, because they feel like, well, we also have to try and do something because the other teams are also making changes. But I think we'd have expected a bit more from Envoy so far, whether it's just a function of the way the team is designed, whether it's just kind of like early days in Envoy's time on Toronto to understand exactly where he fits in. But given, you know, the fact that he's a world champion and what he's achieved over the last several years, from even a slaying aspect as well, I think that there is, I wouldn't exactly say there's pressure on Envoy quite yet, because I don't think that they're going to be like dropping him anytime soon, but I just think it's an interesting storyline to look for, that so far Hicksy and Envoy's stats are actually very similar, and Envoy continues to have a bit of a hard time in practice, it seems, over the last couple of days. We'll see whether that translates when the league gets back underway. So very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. I'll just share, I guess, one final thing in terms of who Toronto actually play going forwards. So these are their upcoming games. They play Surge, Thieves, New York, and Vegas. So, you know, some of those are difficult, some of those are easier. You should think that they'd be fine to get through, but there's going to be some tester series in there. There's no doubt about it. So very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.